let's turn our focus back to Texas and other states in this region where one of the big challenges cattle operations face is prickly pear. Let's learn a little more about prickly pear and some of the challenges it presents and the ways it can be controlled.
Probably the main problem that we have with prickly pear is basically reducing forage access. As you can see with this plant, there's actually quite a bit of forage that actually grows up in the pear. But the problem is that cattle don't have access to that, and so it becomes ungrazable. If you look at a pasture like that we're standing in right here, you can actually see where cattle have grazed around this pear, but yet they haven't grazed in the pear. So effectively what this pear has really done is taken this little bit of land out of production, if you will. If you think about pear from the standpoint of taking over pasture and really not so much out competing the grass for moisture as much as for space, we got to look at it from the standpoint of how much pear can we really handle in a pasture before it starts causing a problem. Anything above about 25% cover of prickly pear is going to be detrimental to grazing. It's a very succulent plant. Lots of water in the plant, and so it can survive for a lot of years with low moisture situations. It's a very wet plant. You would think that cattle would like to eat this plant, but in actuality, because of the spines and things on it, it causes a lot of issues with cattle. It causes pear mouth and things like that. It causes a lot of ulcerations in their tongues and in their mouths and lips. There are lots of different varieties of pear in Texas, pear in the United States. But by and large, the recipe for controlling prickly pear is all the same, regardless of the species. That's the good thing. One thing to keep in mind when we talk about controlling prickly pear with chemicals, prickly pear by nature is a very slow metabolizing plant. Things go on inside that plant from a metabolism standpoint very slowly. So when we spray prickly pear, we have to expect that takes a significant amount of time to actually work. When we put Tordon, 22K, or Surmount, what we have to do is make sure that we get good coverage on this plant. We have to use some good surfactants to get through that pad, and make sure that when you're spraying the pad, especially from the ground with a hand sprayer, do what you can to spray both sides of that pad and not just spray one side of the plant. The more herbicide coverage that you can get on that plant, the more we get through that thick, heavy wax cuticle and the better control that we get of the plant. It's not so much that we can't control prickly pear in dry weather, it just takes longer. That's when it takes that 2 to 3 years to get the full kill. If we've got good wet moisture conditions, everything's green like we see here in this place, at this place today, it's a lot faster control. We can a lot of times see activity going on in 2 to 3 months and good control in 1 to 2 years instead of 2 to 3 years. So moisture is extremely important.